of scientific discoveries. Encouragement and protection by the state, that no one can come and burn the books or transgress against knowledge and wisdom and attaining knowledge. And people traveled across continents only to listen to a phrase or a piece of information that could be just probably 2 lines long. People would travel. That was a custom. You know, Ibn Battuta, one of the great historians that traveled throughout the Muslim world and wrote the biography and the history of each town that he visited. You have so much expansion of many of those scientific discoveries. So that's number 3, the promotion and protection. To promote, but also to protect from transgressing against it. The first one is the protection of faith, then was the protection of life, soul, and then the protection, and obviously even within life, you have the life of the heart, spirituality, to promote it. And that comes under the protection of life. And those are all, you know, I'm only giving a few examples because those are really overarching principles that go beyond any specific rules or regulations. The third one was the intellect, and the fourth one was wealth, protection of wealth from transgression, that everybody has personal freedom in owning. So the Islamic principle of wealth is that it is a gift that God entrusted you with, just like the intellect. God entrusted you with this wealth, with owning whether property, with structures, with everything that you have, that this wealth needs to be protected against people stealing from it, and that's why you have rules and regulations prohibiting stealing of all different forms of stealing, whether it's concealed under different terms and regulations and so forth, but all of it in principle is prohibited. And therefore some forms of stealing has punishments, other forms don't have punishments. But it's still a sin, and it's still something that's prohibited. It's still something that might be punished by other forms of punishment that are not prescribed in the Quran. The promotion of wealth also includes that interest is prohibited in Islam because it's considered to be a return for nothing. Basically, you have a debt, and the debt does not increase. You put the debt in your safe deposit box, and it doesn't increase just a bit. So basically, paying something that does not increase is unjust. So the core is not actually just the prohibition, it's the unjust fairness in the unjust treatment, and the fairness in financial contracts and commercial deals between people. That commercial deals need to be fair, so that my wealth and your wealth is protected. You can't sell me something that's unknown and undescribed and explained in specific details. So there was this example in history that they say, you can't sell me the bird and the fly in the sky, because you don't know if you're going to shoot it or not, you don't know how much it weighs, you don't know if it's going to be a male or a female, or a good meat, bad meat. You don't know really what you're selling. Selling something that's unknown and not described is unfair. And therefore, it's a transgression, it's an oppression. It's a form of oppression against my wealth. Why are you selling me something that I really don't know what I'm going into? We have this fine print culture that we have in this country, unfortunately, and we've exported to so many parts of the world. This fine print, somewhere in the fine print, you have something that really, makes you think, why am I going into this whole contract? And that's the fairness in dealing commercially is also something that's protected. The right to own something. So you're not going towards the socialist type of economic system, but on the other hand, you're also not going extremely on the so-called capitalist system. It is a unique system that preserves personal freedoms to own property, but also balances that with a right to social justice. A right that everybody has to pay 2.5% of their savings, not their income, but their savings, to the poor, to the needy, to the general causes in society, to the people that are stranded, to the people that are orphaned, to the people that are in debt. There's 8 categories, for example, in the Quran, talking about who deserve to be helped. But also there's this social justice that beyond this 2.5%, everybody has a right and a responsibility at the same time to make sure that there's nobody hungry, there's nobody homeless in society. That this is it's general welfare, that you have a right towards others. Because one person who's homeless affects the entire life quality of the whole society. So this is something that touches everybody's lives. And therefore it is a public interest. We have this term here that it's national security measure, and therefore I can pass any law that I want if it's national security. In Islamic law, if it's public benefit, if it's public interest, that it affects everybody's lives, then it should be organized. It should be something that should be addressed. So that's number 4, the protection and promotion of wealth. Number 5 is the protection and promotion of family lineage, depends on how you want to translate it. Lineage is probably the most accurate one, which is the promotion of family values. Promotion that a marriage is between a man and woman. Marriage, there's rules and regulations that protect the right of children, the right of women to choose marriage, and the right of men to choose who they marry to. Believe it or not, some cultures actually is the other way around. So it's not always the females that are being forced. But either way is unacceptable. Going into marriage, going out of marriage, that those rules and regulations should all be within the context of, what's the key word I started with? Mercy. That those rules and regulations have to fulfill this objective. So when somebody comes and says, does Islam approve of this or that situation? Well, I take it back to that general rule. Does it fulfill this or not? If there are certain texts, then all those texts are interpreted. Islamic law is not, this may be shocking to some people, but Islamic law is not 100% divine law word for word. God gave you the principles in the Quran and the sayings of the Prophet. God gave you the minimum and the maximum, gave you the bounds, and told you, go ahead, live your life. It's the interaction of the divine text with the practices that you do. And this is an area of Islamic law that enables it to renew itself, that enables it to interact positively with any society that it goes through. So we have a set of Islamic, when you talk about Sharia law, well, what's Sharia law? There's 4 schools of thought. Actually, there's like 13 schools of thought in the Sunni, the Sunni sect, but there's also several in the Shia sect. So what is Islamic law? Which one do you follow? There's interpretations. So the interpretation is not divine. My understanding of the Quran or of the Sunnah or the Sunnah is the sayings of the Prophet, peace be upon him, is not divine. The text itself is divine, but my interpretation and my application could be right or wrong. And that's why, some people, and that's one of the reasons of misinformation on Sharia, is that some Muslims follow it strictly without distinguishing between what is actually divine, what is said by God, and what is said by a scholar or by an imam or someone who told them that this is the way you understand it. And you look into Islamic law, there's multiple opinions on one matter. There's also the legal matter versus the state matter. So not every sin that is unlawful in Islam is technically a legal rule that a judge or a court of law orders to implement. And this is also very common in Islamic history, where the state does not get involved in people's lives. Whether you want to call that left or right, I don't know how you classify it, but the state does not get involved in people's lives and the way they want to live their life. The second caliph or the governor, Omar, was once walking at night in the city of Medina, and he overheard people getting drunk. I don't know if that story is actually even right or wrong, but this is what one of the narratives is that he overlooked from on top of the house and he saw them, so he knocked on the door, or I think he jumped over. That's not really possible, but either way, they told him you can't come into our houses. So spying is not allowed. Interrogating people without probable cause is not allowed. You have these principles, that overarching principles of the protection again of my freedoms. You have in the U.S. you can't go naked in the street. You can't drink in public. Why? Again, when you look at issues of fornication in Islam, is fornication punishable by itself? That's a question. Is it punishable, just the act of fornication? No. Okay, the answer is no. Is it a sin? Of course it is a sin. That's in the Quran. But is it punishable by a state of law? Is a state obliged to go investigate those cases? No. Only when it's brought to their attention that there's 4 witnesses. So that comes back to drinking in public, fornicating in public. The word "in public" is the problem, because it touches on the issue of promotion of family values. It touches on that issue of prevention of mixed DNAs, or mixed ansab, mixed lineage, that you really don't know who your father, your mother, your society is based on this core value of a family that keeps this society together. And you may debate that, but it's okay. That's the number 5 overarching principle in Islam, and those are called the objectives, the general objectives of Islamic law. And those interact with another set of rules, but are more technical. And that's why, and those technical rules are called usul al-fiqh, and those are more technical rules of how you can interpret text. What kind of text is straightforward to the point? What kind of text allows for multiple interpretations? What kind of text, you have a Constitution of the United States. How do you interpret that Constitution as a legal scholar? You have principles, you have common law, you have practice, you have so many things, resources, that allows you to go and go in front of a judge and say, my interpretation of this constitutional amendment is that you are not allowed to do X, Y, and Z. In the same manner, legal scholars come and use these technical rules of interpretation. The technical rules are called usul al-fiqh. And by the way, those have been developed within Islamic history, but also been used by multiple legal systems other than the Islamic legal system. So it was copied, it was used right now in Islamic countries that are almost all of them use a civil secular legal system, but yet everybody who goes into law school in every Arab, non-Arab country has to study usul al-fiqh. Even though the examples in it are from the Quran and so forth, but it's the methodology. It gives you a methodology of how you can interpret the text. How do you know that this text is superior and this text comes afterwards? So you have overarching principles, the 5 objectives that I mentioned. You have verses in the Quran that are clear-cut, and those are very, very few, that are very explicit, to the point, have no other interpretation whatsoever, have no context attached to them, and those are very, very few. And those are the overarching, those are the ones that emphasize on mercy. So when the word says, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ, means we have not sent you but for mercy. There is no way to interpret this text. And therefore this scholar said, well, okay, we'll take this verse and this is an overarching principle. And then you have verses that go into justice, and how justice is preserved and promoted in Islamic law. Am I within time? Sorry. So